Hi TK students, are you ready to do an ABC chant for our community helpers? Let's get started. First we're going to look right here at the alarm. Here we go. Big A, little a, what begins with A? Alarm. Alarm begins with A. Let's look right here at this picture. What do you see? What do you notice? Over here, friends. Big B, little b. What begins with B? Badge. Badge begins with B. Oh my, look at this one. Are you thinking about what it might be? All right, friends, here we go. Big B, little b. What begins with B? Bandage. Bandage begins with B. Oh, right here, friends. Did you take a peek at it? Do you know what it is? Here we go. Big C, little c. What begins with C? Crutches. Crutches begin with C. Oh, this should be an easy one, boys and girls. Big C, little c. What begins with C? Classroom. Classroom begins with C. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. This is when children go to a special classroom with just computers. Here we go. Big C, little c. What begins with C? Computer lab. Computer lab begins with C. Oh my. If you know someone who's had this happen before, they got quite hurt. And then this makes them better. Here we go. Big C, little c. What begins with C? Cast. Cast begins with C. Oh, this is one of our community helpers, friends. Big D, little d. What begins with D? Doctor. Doctor begins with D. Oh, this holds trash and is very large. Let's see what it's called. Big D, little d. What begins with D? Dumpster. Dumpster begins with D. Oh, this is something a doctor does to see how you're doing. Big E, little e. What begins with E? Exam. Exam begins with E. Oh, look, this word is the same right here, friends. Oh, okay, let's try this one. Take a peek. Here we go. Big E, little e. What begins with E? Exam room. Exam room begins with E. Oh, pictures like this should be very familiar from when we learned about the firefighter. Here we go, friends. Big F, little f. What begins with F? Firefighter. Firefighter begins with F. Oh, are you noticing down here that we see the same word again? Me too. Big F, little f. What begins with F? Fire engine. Fire engine begins with F. And friends, if it was a fire truck in that picture, I apologize. Okay, we're looking at this, and this is where the firefighters, where they work, they're building. Big F, little f. What begins with F? Fire station. Fire station begins with F. When you go to a hospital, you might be transported in this from an ambulance. And this is a bed and it has some wheels to roll you around. Do you remember what it's called, friends? Let's do it together. Big G, little g, what begins with G? Gurney. Gurney begins with G. Oh, here we go, friends. This one's red. Most of the time we see them, they're yellow. Do you remember what it's called? Big H, little h, what begins with H? Hydrant. Hydrant begins with H. Big H, little h, what begins with H? Helmet. Helmet begins with H. Oh, look at those firefighters holding something. Let's see if we can figure it out. Big H, little h, what begins with H? Hose. Hose begins with H. Okay, so right here, you're looking right here. This is a building where we go if we get sick, where the doctors work. Big H, little h, what begins with H? Hospital. Hospital begins with H. Oh, we're looking at this. Boys and girls, this is called a letter. Let's do this one together. Big L, little l, what begins with L? Letter. Letter begins with L. Oh, I'm looking at this picture, and this picture looks like there's a lot of trash. The place where there is a lot of trash, where it all goes, is called a big L, little l, what begins with L? Landfill. Landfill begins with L. Oh, boys and girls, I'm looking at this and look at all those books. Did you see it? Big L, little l, what begins with L? Library. Library begins with L. Here we go. We've seen this one. Big M, little m, what begins with M? Mailbox. Mailbox begins with M. All right, here we go. We have to figure out if this is a doctor or a nurse. Let's come over here and figure out by the first sound. Big N, little n, what begins with N? Nurse. Nurse begins with N. All right, right here. Big O, little o, what begins with O? Office. Office begins with O. Okay. We're going to look at these next two doctor tools. Here we go. Big O, little o, what begins with O? Otoscope. Otoscope begins with O. Big O, little o, what begins with O? Ophthalmoscope. Ophthalmoscope begins with O. Big P, little p, what begins with P? Postal worker. Postal worker begins with P. Right here. Big P, little p, What begins with P? Police officer. Police officer begins with P. It looks like she's wearing scrubs. I wonder if she is a doctor, a nurse, or something else. Let's look at the word. Big R, little r. What begins with R? Receptionist. Receptionist begins with R. Big R. Oh, I'm sorry, friends. Here we go. Look at this picture. You know what this one's called. Do you remember it when the doctor taps you on your knee or your elbow or your heel? You remember? And your foot or arm or knee will move automatically. Here we go. Big R, little r. What begins with R? Reflex hammer. Reflex hammer begins with R. Oh, you've seen this symbol before. Big R, little r. What begins with R? Recycle. Recycle begins with R. Oh, look at that. That's not the way our trash trucks look. Let's see if we can figure this one out. This is next week's lesson. Big S, little s. What begins with S? Sanitation worker. Sanitation worker begins with S. Oh, look there. Here we go. Big S, little s. What begins with S? Siren. Siren begins with S. Big S, little s. What begins with S? Surgeon. Surgeon begins with S. This is a doctor who has a lot of specialties if you have something that needs to get fixed. So they take you to surgery and they make you better. Oh, this is Mrs. Nicolosia, Mrs. Stevens' job. It is, and remember, it is the best job in the whole wide world. Here we go. Big T, little t. What begins with T? Teacher. Teacher begins with T. Big T, little t. What begins with T? Trash. Trash begins with T. Big U, little u. What begins with U? This one has actually a U sound. U. Uniform. Uniform begins with U. Big V, little v. What begins with V? Vaccine. Vaccine begins with V. Big W, little w. What begins with W? Wheelchair. Wheelchair begins with W. Big W, little w. What begins with W? Waiting room. Waiting room begins with W. Big X, little x. What begins with X? X-ray. X-ray begins with X.